Welcome to Holdfast.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Erika again today. We're doing another episode of the character highlights. Today we have Mitch with us.
Hello.
Mitch, welcome to the podcast.
How's it going, everybody? It's your boy, as they say in the hip
Mitch,
young people community.
Mitch has been a staple of Epoch for, I don't even know how long, definitely longer than I've been there. Yeah, so I'm really excited to have him on here today to kind of pick his brain a little bit about his character. Mitch plays the character Hugo. I think it's going to be...
Gavius Albinius.
Oh, that's a name. I did not know.
He has a middle and
name.
last name, too, except nobody knows that.
I had no idea. But this is going to be great because we're going to get into all of that now. Mitch, I'm pretty much going to let you take it from here. But
right.
First of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into LARPing, and then we'll start talking about your first game.
Oh, God. All right, so right there at the beginning, oh boy. So this story begins a little bit before, I think maybe in August, maybe early September, basically right in the, I should probably tell the year, 2015. I am introduced to LARP in my first year of university by a fellow, his name is Christian. I don't know if I should say his name out loud, but I'm not going to say his last name for the sake of semi-anonymity, if that's a word. He's been part of the LARP longer than I have, and he invited me out one day to hang out with him and talk a little bit about gamer stuff like D&D and LARP, which he was a part of, but I wasn't. At this point, I was thinking I was going to be going into engineering, which is a very stressful sort of thing to study at university. That didn't work out, but what did work out is that I ended up going to a LARP event with him and a couple of other buddies in September of 2015. It was the last game of the season. It was supposed to be this big ol' climactic battle, which he didn't tell me about, of course. I just kind of go in thinking, oh, this is going to be super casual, super chill, just hang out with people, and just have a nice weekend off. No, that didn't happen at all.
Did you know what LARP was, or did you have like any kind of idea of what it was? Like, did you know what you were getting into?
I Googled it at one point. Like, he explained to me how you're supposed to, like before September, he'd got me into D&D. So he's like, this is D&D, but in real life. You were in drama in high school, right? I'm like, yeah, I kind of was. I played some roles in plays and stuff like that, and apparently people enjoyed those. And he was like, yeah, you should come do that. But instead of doing it for an audience, you're doing it for all the other actors who are just kind of making up the lines to go on. I'm like, this sounds a little bit like improv, Christian. It's like, yeah, I know it kind of does. Except there were stats, and I'm like, ooh boy, stats.
Do you enjoy stats? Are you that kind of...
Oh boy. I'm glad I've never played 3.5 edition of D&D, because if I started, I don't think I could ever stop.
Legit. So what happened at your first game? That was the Necrodancer game, right?
Oh yes, that was the Necrodancer game.
So why don't you just bring us through it? Tell us all about what happened.
Oh boy. So my first game, in the lead up to this, I'd given myself the delusion almost. It's not necessarily a delusion, but I had the idea in my head going into this game. That I had, I don't know, an ego, I guess. I had this idea of that I was going to go in and I was going to be like, hey, here's my character, da-da-da-da-da-da. But that game, that's actually hyper insubstantial and it's not much to go off of. What's more important at game is kind of what you do.
Right.
Wait, what was the question?
What happened at your first game?
Oh,
like,
yes.
What went down? What were your experiences?
All right, so... first thing, I think Friday night, not much happened at the Necrodancer game. I think there was Hellions, and I was scared shitless because I was coming in as a new person to any game. When you start hearing Rob off in the woods screaming in a high pitched voice, and it sounds like owls, but they're coming to kill you, is a bit petrifying. But there were people around who seemed capable of dealing with it, and so I tried to help them out as best as I could. And then, more importantly, though, the highlight is Saturday night when there's this necromancer. I don't even know what the Necrodancer was. He was just a skeleton who played the drums, and it scared the crap out of everybody. He apparently, up at this point, like, I'd not been warned about this at all by any of the players who I talked with before game, that the Necrodancer was this undead drummer guy who controlled skeletons with his drum. And there was a very interesting fight where, based on what song he was playing, he was either vulnerable or invulnerable, and his skeleton minions were invulnerable or vulnerable, or attacking you at high speed, flinging their arms around, dealing stupid large amounts of damage. Which I thought at the time 5 was a really big number, because I only had 15 health, and I was like, oh boy, if I get hit 3 times, I go down.
That game was so iconic. I still hear stories about it. People still talk about the Necrodancer.
Oh, it was so good. That was, like, I don't know, you mailed me a list of questions, and there's ones on there like, what are your highlights? And, like, Game 1, Necrodancer game, easily the biggest highlight of my entire LARP existence.
So, take me sort of back to original, because you've had Hugo for quite some time now.
So long.
Yeah, so take me back to, like, that first game and baby Hugo. What was he like? I'm sure he's gone through a lot. Well, I mean, I know for a fact he's gone through a lot of changes, but how did that character start? What was, his initial build? What were his initial character traits? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So, as far as character traits are concerned, Hugo isn't very, or especially back then, wasn't very far from who I was in 2015. He was very much anxiety-riddled about his future, because up until that point in his existence, he was like, or in his backstory, I should say, he was like, oh man, I've traveled all this distance, and that was kind of my goal in life, and now that I've done that, well, now what do I do? Now that I'm in Holdfast, of all places. Which is kind of why I was like, oh hey, you just got out of high school, you don't know what the hell you're going to do with your life, so, I mean, same difference.
Relatable.
Relatable. And then, let's see, that's kind of, his backstory was very bare bones in the sense that I am a traveler. I am now in Holdfast. I will now have to put up with whatever Holdfast will throw at me since I'm here. Since then, he has changed a lot. Like, a lot. Too much. So much shit.
Well, for example, was Hugo always a mute when you started
No,
playing?
he wasn't. His first game, he was not a mute. But the only thing that I said that I thought, the first thing I did was I came into game and I spouted off my edgy backstory. I'm like, wait a second, this isn't how characters are supposed to work. I should shut the fuck up. And so I did. This might be a point where you might explain the concept of mulliganing in our LARP system.
Right. Do you want to explain it to the folks at home?
Sure thing. After your first game, every player is given the opportunity to completely redo their character sheet, where they have all their skills and all this stuff like that. I looked at everything that I had done that previous game. I looked at my build and said, my build is very janky. I have a build built around trying to regenerate health over in 10-minute intervals. Nothing like that is not fast enough. I need some sort of skill to make this faster, and there happened to be a thing that would let me do that. The problem is I didn't have enough experience, and so I was like, how do I get more experience now that the season is over? There's a section in the rulebook called Disadvantages. One of the disadvantages is titled Mute. You are not allowed to talk. And I'm like, that's the 10 XP that I need. And based on everything that I said at game, there's not much I can really add based on how Hugo works. Like, he has a backstory, and spouting off your backstory at somebody is not good roleplay. So I will shut the fuck up. And so...
And, yeah, you became the first mute I had ever met in game.
One of the earliest mutes. I think there were characters who were mute before this, but who immediately mulliganed out of having it because they realized it was stupid. And I'm the guy who mulliganed into being mute, because that was genius.
But luckily, you managed to, finagle your way out of it, which leads me to my next question. How has your character changed over time? What's going on with Hugo now that he's no longer fresh out of high school, worried about the future?
I like to think that Hugo's still technically worried about the future, in a sort of, it's in the back of his mind sense, much like how I am now, I suppose. But Hugo, after being mute for about a year, and an incident where the AD of the game sat on the porch all day throwing little bits of plastic, which are mana shards, at me, and seeing how I'd react to not having a voice, opening a business selling mana shards, witnessing a murder, concluding that I need to get unmuted so that I can yell at people for being dumb, getting unmuted, yelling at them for being dumb, having something insanely stupid happen, trying to resolve that, but then other characters are like, hey, you said you had ideals, and I'm like, yeah, I guess you did. So then I stuck to them, and then there was like a kerfuffle about that for about a year. Someone kissed my boots about it. Apparently that's resolved now. And now Hugo is one of the premier psychics at game, who just kind of shows up every now and again, does a psychic Momo Jumbo, obliterates spiders, and then leaves again.
Yeah, Hugo,
That's the whole thing. That's all of what Hugo's done.
Hugo turns spiders into dust.
Pink mist, in the words of the person playing the spider when I hit it for a couple hundred damage.
So yeah, you've certainly like built him up to. I mean, I know I keep using the word staple, but he really is just, built into this really like nicely fleshed out, super experienced character.
I wouldn't call him fleshed out. I'm just still sitting here like, man, he's just a dumbass. He has one idea, and he's going to try to inflict it on everyone else in town.
I think he was also the first ghost that we ever.
Oh yeah, Hugos.
Had.
Yeah, he's one of the first people who stayed dead. Because normally in Hold Fast, you die, then you show up 20 minutes later asking for your stuff back. But Hugo was like, yeah, no, I died. Like, I sent the AD a text message saying, hey, I do this. And then I got a text back saying, you died. Like, not even like a screen cap of the Dark Souls, you died screen. Just a text that says, you died. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm a ghost now. And he's like, yeah, you are.
It's worse than any Dark Souls screen ever.
Yeah. And so instead of doing what everyone else does and, like, come back to life like a coward, I was like, what if I just stayed dead?
Is he, like, permadead?
He didn't permadie, but normally, I don't know if this is spoilers, but when you die, the AD has to sit down and is like, okay, do you come back? Instead of saying yes, like everyone else would do, I said no. Mind if I stay dead for a while? And they went, yeah, sure, why not? And so I did. Hugos' first appearance was 3 months after he died to plot shenanigans, where someone asked him, hey, can you deliver a letter to these people who live in the magical maelstrom of instant death? And I said, sure. Hand it here.
And then you went there.
And then I went there, and then I died instantly. Hugos showed up one night when the town was getting absolutely ravaged by the Lich and whatever his goons were. He would materialize out of nowhere, heal someone, and then disappear again, or bless them with some sort of boon to their damage or their health or something like that.
Oh, nice.
Which was super cool, and honestly is kind of my favorite way to play the game at this point, is walk around being a ghost as much as possible, and then just kind of buffing people from the shadows.
Interesting. Well, that maybe answers one of my questions in here.
Oh boy.
So what have been some of your best moments with Hugo? What are you, where do you look back and say, oh yeah, Hugo really did that?
Moments where I sit down and think, oh man, Hugo did a good thing. I don't know if he's ever done anything good, but I've definitely had fun doing certain things.
I mean, that counts.
There was one day leading up to the Godo invasion. This is a fun story. Where all the creatures were in the woods were fleeing because there was an army approaching the town. And so they'd ruffled up everything in the woods and they were all fleeing. All the alchemists who lust after snakeskin as though it was some sort of ichor saw the snakes fleeing across the field and thought to themselves, I could have some of that delicious, delicious healing potion ingredient for myself. And one of them turned to Hugo and said, hey, hello, Hugo, could you beat up that snake for me? So I said, sure. The night before, I had used a particularly ridiculously overpowered magic item to boost how much damage my weapon could do. And so I ran up to this snake, which had probably 80 health, and I hit it for about 400 damage.
Oh my god.
It instantly exploded into a cloud of pink mist, therefore rendering any of its ingredients inaccessible. I was then yelled at by the alchemist for exploding the snake. So I said, okay, next time I won't hit the snake so hard. So I hit it half as hard. It still exploded. And they're like, Hugo! And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to hit it less hard. And then I did. I went a quarter of the original one, and then it didn't explode. Only half of the snake exploded. And I was very excited about that. Because
so you're kind of gauging how how little and how much power to use with this particularly
it's like,
OP.
It's like if you don't have the instructions for a pizza and you just kind of throw it in the oven. I'm like, well, I think it said 20 minutes. How about 800 degrees? How about 600 degrees? How about 200 degrees? Oh, that's way too low. I see.
Any other best moments? Any other highlights for us?
Let's see. When you say highlights, you mean interesting stories or things that I enjoyed doing? Because those are two distinctly different things.
I mean, things that you enjoy doing are like moments that you particularly enjoy with Hugo. But I mean, even interesting stories, like anything where you look back at game and say, like, that was a good game.
Yeah. Let's rewind all the way back to Mute Hugo, which is the second form of the 4 Hugos, which are Game 1 Hugo, Mute Hugo, Psychic Hugo, then Excessively Psychic Hugo. Rewinding all the way back to Mute Hugo, there was this was the thing that got me to decide that, hello, maybe I should not be a mute person because clearly I have opinions and I need to yell at people about them. So this Imperial Dame came into town and for some reason was dispensing candies which meant that she could mind control them. I guess that was the plot for this evening. And the cast member playing them was very tired at this point in the evening, so they decided to retire to bed. But they thought to themselves, maybe I should, because evidently people in town will want to murder me even though I'm tired, I'm going to leave my phys rep, which is your physical representation, in a bunk in the bunkhouse, and hope that no one murders me, I guess. So they left like a wig and a pillow with a little smiley face or something on it saying, hello, I am Grand Dame of the Empire, please don't kill me, written on a bunk. Previously in the night I had been casting, so I'd been playing monsters and stuff. And then only at this point in the night was I in character getting out of bed as Hugo the Mute at like 3 in the morning or something, because that's healthy. So I get out of my hammock and I roll out of bed and I'm looking out over the rest of the bunkhouse, and there are 3 people standing around a bunk. One of them has a sword drawn. I go up to them and I take out my notebook and I write down what's going on and I show it to them, and they're like, we're murdering this Grand Dame of the Empire. Hugo, being an Imperial, didn't necessarily approve of this, so I started writing a note that said, please don't do that. And by the time I finished the note and hold it up to them, they're like, oh, we already finished the killing blow count. I'm like, huh. I see. And at that point, I was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't my day. Maybe I should find some words to throw at these people about how ridiculous this whole thing seems. I actually went outside and hit a Venus flytrap with a stick, and it melted my polearm, which was a pain in the butt. Had to go get it fixed. All in all, not a great night, but certainly a memorable one.
Very memorable.
Yeah, I definitely remember attending the hearing about what to do about the guy who murdered the Grand Dame, and throwing my notebook at people with words written on it like, this guy murdered this lady, please do something about him.
Honestly, the fallout from that game was extensive.
Oh my god, so extensive. There was a follow-up highlight to this one where the guy who was with the Grand Dame, who was her, like, son, grandson, something like that.
It was her nephew, I believe.
Nephew, yeah. General Basilius returns to seek vengeance against the people who murdered his great-aunt. And in the process of searching through the belongings of someone who, of the person who did the murder, accidentally touched a potion, touched a box which had been booby-trapped, which inflicted him with the Strike Dumb potion, which means he couldn't talk, much like Hugo. And so, I'm just sitting in the bunkhouse minding my own business. He's rooting through this guy's stuff. I'm like, I don't care about this. And he opens the box, sees a sticker, and like peels the sticker off, looks at it closely, and then groans. And then puts the sticker back, closes the box, walks over to me, and starts gesticulating at me, like, with his hands and stuff. I'm like, pull out my notebook and write in it, do you want to borrow this? And he takes the notebook and flips through it and sees the page, yes, and points it at me. I'm like, understandable, have a nice day. And I think he spent, like, the next hour being mute. He couldn't yell at anybody for how stupid this whole thing was.
It's just like, finally, someone understands my pain.
It's like, yeah, no, that was a great moment. Finally, someone understands my pain.
Imagine this for 72 hours.
Oh, God.
Well, on that note, what have been some of your characters' worst moments? If those are the best, I can't wait to hear the worst.
If watching the Grand Dame of the Empire counts as a highlight, oh lord. Lowlights, Hugo certainly had some moments where he's not had a great time and where I didn't have a great time playing him. To keep it kind of lighthearted, there's one moment I recall where Hugo, I don't even remember why, but he was just like, fuck it, I give up. So he just went out into the middle of the field on like a Friday night when there's Hellions, and just laid down in the middle of the field. It's like, come on, something kill me.
Oh my god.
Just like, you know what, I'm done. Suicide's a sin, but I'm sure if someone comes along and murders me, that won't count. TACA took exception
I've
to this.
certainly had those moments as well where I just feel like
Nothing's going
completing
your way.
Asher's life by way of Hellion or Dollface or something horrible.
It's like, please, cast, end me. I need it. I need to just be a ghost this evening.
I need
Anyways,
to feel something.
yeah. TACA wasn't having any of this. TACA came and was like, Hugo, what are you doing? Oh, lying down in the field, watching the stars, waiting to die. He's like, Hugo, that's not very healthy. Come inside. I'm like, no. She goes, the player of TACA goes, grapple 3, and I go, grapple 1. I drag you inside, and I'm like, okay, then do it. For those in the audience, I don't weigh that much. I should be able to be dragged around by anybody, but one of my favorite things about game is making people carry me around. Because I exude big twink energy, I can be easily toted around by basically anyone at game, but for some reason this evening, this turned into kind of a spectacle where, for some reason, TACA, who couldn't lift me and carry me into the inn like they wanted to do with the grapple call, like to fizz rep it, had to go get the assistance of at least 6 other people to pick me up by each limb and shoulders and waist and physically carry me over the course of like 10 or 15 minutes back into the inn, where I then lay down and had a nap instead.
Oh, okay.
That was
Well,
a low
than...
point. Instead of hucking me into the woods and waiting for me to die, yeah. But
that's better than being ripped apart by a Hellion.
Yeah, technically.
So, I mean, what is Hugo's motivation right now? I mean, I know you say you enjoy being a ghost, but, like, what are his goals right now? What were your goals for the season? God willing, you get to have a game. What's the plan?
Goals for Hugo, since the Ascended plot is the main plot, Hugo's plan has always just been to be around when Godo was around, to hit him for a couple million damage just to see what cast would do.
Right.
Because I'm fairly confident that this kind of plot that we're kind of going through now is not meant to be one that you're supposed to whack. And I just kind of want to prove it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, how about I call 35 million on you and see what happens?
Can you honestly, like, is 35 million a reasonable...
It's not unattainable.
Wow.
For those of you playing along at home being like, what are these bullshit numbers? Once upon a time, there was an auction at game which had an uninteresting sounding item in it that claimed to ramp up your recuperating powers, which, being the only character at game who had even taken the recuperate skill, the one that makes you self-heal, was like, yeah, sure, I'll buy that. So I did, and no one decided to bet against me. So I got it, read the description of it, looked at the AD, said, are you sure? They said yes. I said, are you really sure? They said yes. And so when we went in the game that night, I hit a spider for about 110 damage, because this ability gave me the ability to regenerate psychic states, which is as if all the mages just had infinite mana, effectively.
Right.
It's like if you just turned on wall hacks, but for psychics in particular. And Hugo, at this point, had become kind of one of the premier psychics at game.
Yeah.
And
normally,
so
I'll just interject for
Yeah.
those who don't play Epoch. Normally, regenerating psychic states takes a minimum of just to get one psychic state.
like 10 to 20 minutes.
It anywhere between 10, 15, 20 minutes to get one psychic state back.
Yeah.
So it's a considerable amount of time that Mitch has managed to cut down on.
Yeah, with this limited use item, you can effectively have unlimited psychic power.
Right.
Which, there's a damage boosting one, which I picked up as a joke, but now it was not a joke anymore. And so I've just kind of been pushing the limits of what's reasonable to have happen at game with it until it runs out, because it is supposed to run out one of these days. And I can't wait for that day when I have to go back to playing the game properly.
It's gonna suck.
It's gonna suck ass, yeah, but as long as I have it, any psychic who happens to be friends with Hugo basically gets to play the game with hacks.
Right.
And I try not to use it if I don't feel like Hugo would use it, because it's just kind of ridiculous. Like, if cast has to start a comp, like, planning for there being one asshole swinging for 1200 damage in mods, and like then that would just make everyone else's lives suck, because all of a sudden all the monsters have 1201 health and are impossible to kill.
Yeah, it's like literally only Hugo.
Yeah, I'm just like, or anyone that Hugo sees fit to share it with.
Yeah.
It's a shareable thing. It's ridiculous. I kind of like, part of the reason I keep Hugo now for special occasions is kind of like, yeah, do I just need to come out and obliterate whatever cast decided was fair to throw at the players tonight?
Right.
Yeah, and so then there's some nights where I play the funny man, or I play my third character who I have in reserve if I don't want to play the funny man or Hugo.
Mm-hmm.
We'll definitely cast
have
even.
an episode about the funny man at some point.
Oh god, the funny man. The funny dwarf man.
So, do you have... This is kind of a silly question, I'm realizing it as I ask it to more and more people. But does Hugo have a best friend in game?
Does Hugo have a BFF? There's not many people at game. There's not many characters at game anymore where Hugo would be like, yeah, I'm their friend, or I think I consider them a friend.
Right.
That list has diminished over time. To basically all of the psychics who also fight.
Right.
Which are just TACA and Winnie. It's just like, why are we friends? Because probably not even because we have anything in common as people who have similar kind of builds, but it's just, I have the thing that makes you kind of overpowered. Do you want to have some? I don't want to do all of it.
And now we're friends.
And now we're friendship, because I have a thing that you might want. Please be my friendship, even though I am very much the kind of person who doesn't get along with you.
I think TACA sounds like a pretty good friend for Hugo. She pulls him off the field when he's trying to be eaten by Hellions.
Yeah, TACA has big friendship energy towards Hugo, but he is yet to reciprocate beyond just saying like, "Hello, I'm going to entrust a dose of the miracle spice to you. Please don't use it irresponsibly," and then used it to try to win a pumpkin game where you had to try and get pumpkins.
Oh, she was wrecking house that night.
Oh yeah, no, it was brutal.
Aaron has a really good story about that, actually, where he was just sneaking through the woods, and he hears her call for, like, 97 metal damage, and he just turns around and walks in the other direction. He was just like, nope.
Oh yeah, no, it's... TACA with Miracle Spice is probably more potent than Hugo with Miracle Spice.
Yeah?
Just based on the psychic skills that she has versus what Hugo has. I can do a lot of damage in one hit, like an absurd number, but TACA can swing for a still absurd but smaller number, but for like in 10 or 20 minute intervals.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of... this is just turning into a conversation about Miracle Spice, not even about Hugo anymore. But as
Miracle
going
Spice,
back to
it's
friendship...
a hot topic. It is a very hot topic.
Yeah, going back to friendship, there are people that game that Hugo certainly used to look up to. He used to look up to the Knights a lot more. He used to look up to Asher in particular as kind of like, hey, this is what the Knights should be.
Aw.
And then they all died to that giant spider, and for some reason that's the kind of moment in my mind that stands out is when that changed. I don't know why. I have no idea why.
Because we all suck so hard.
It's like, y'all just got obliterated.
We all got hit with, I can't remember if it was fast
I think it
or
was
medium.
fast
What is
poison,
medium poison?
because I was told to go get a medic or an alchemist, and in the time it took for me to sprint from one side of the field to the other, be like, Malva, do you have any antidotes? And Malva went, oh no, I don't. I'm like, fuck, and then ran all the way back. Everyone was dead. And just in that period of time, I come back, 4 people are
yelling,
dead.
Somebody untaint me! I need a water mage! I need a water mage! And then I just died.
Yep, that's how that went.
And there's literally nothing else
It
you
just
can
rolled
say
up.
about it. Like, that's just
all
what
of the
happened.
water mages were out of character for some reason. This thing shows up with fast poison, kills everyone, then leaves again. When that queen spider though came back, everyone was like, "Are you familiar with the meme where like everyone's like, where it's like, hey, here's the queen spider." When she came around the first time, I sleep, and then Queen Spider comes back, real shit, and everyone's eyes like pop open and start glowing red.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I actually won I got a Fighting Spirit award during the second spider fight because the Queen Spider had brought along minions.
Ooh.
And I had squared off against one of them and was like very angry because, again, I was like, I had big power friendship energy from watching everyone else die that last time. And I had killed one of these spiders solo, and then the cast member like dropped the puppet to indicate that, yeah, no, it's dead, and I punted the Fizz rep into the woods.
Of the giant spider?
Just into a tree. One of the giant spider Fizz reps. I was so like in character angry about these spiders that when I killed this one and it was dealt with and the puppeteer had dropped it, I just take out my rage on it. I booted it from where Gank Alley is back up into the trees behind the toilets.
I bet Cast
and then chased the Queen Spider back off into the woods where I just beat on it for like the next 20 minutes. I was very engaged with plot that game, I think.
It was a good game. That was, oh my gosh, that feels like forever ago.
I know, but it was so good. They're fun.
So fun. What are your greatest wishes for Hugo? What do you want to see long term for him?
You know, you sent me a list of questions to answer, and I have them all written out here on sticky notes. When I got to the question, what do I want to have happen to Hugo, it's just blank. Like, there's nothing.
You have no plans for him? Like, no long-term goal?
I have, like, some vague XP ideas of what I might do, and I have absolutely no character ideas, like, of where he's going to go next, because what Hugo's always done is it's always been influenced by what happened at game.
Right.
I have no idea what Hugos Future is going to look like, because I have no idea what's going to happen at game next. It might end up being some situation where it's like, in order to defeat the Ascended, one of you has to become the Ascended, and that's like, hey, I'll do it, just because, A, this could write me out of the story, and I can go off and live happily ever after in the astral plane or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or it might just be something like, hey, you just have to beat on Godo a lot, and I'll do that.
Are you looking at retirement for Hugo at any point?
I feel like it's if any of my characters are going to be retired soon, it would probably be Hugo first, just because he has been around for so long, and I feel like he kind of has everything that he needs, and he might end up... Like, if any of my characters are going to be retired at this point, it's going to be him just because he has everything that he needs, and if I ever need to go to the AD and be like, hello, I'm done playing this character, he can be an NPC now. You can choose when he does and does not come in the game, or I can just retire him and say that he goes back into the West, and he's never seen again.
Right. Do you think, is that something that you, like, if you were to do it, that would be the first character, but it's not something that you've, like, put on the table yet?
Yeah. It's something that I'm like, if it's going to happen, it will happen when it feels right. Basically, whenever Hugo runs out of things that he's in Holdfast because, at this point, because he wants to change things. And if he runs out of things that he wants to change, if he looks at Holdfast and goes, I think they can handle it without me yelling at them to do stuff the way I want to see them do it, he'll just leave.
So never.
So never. No, they will always look at a bandit and be like, yeah, no, he stole 5 teacups, he deserves to die, and then look at a player character like, yeah, I know you murdered that guy a week ago, but yeah, like, sure, here's all my void mana, please go void kills things, and don't void kill me, right? Please? Please? Yeah, sure thing.
Amazing.
Oh, God.
Well, yeah, during these interviews, I've kind of been giving personal stories from me of my favorite moments with everybody's characters, so I could totally share one with Hugo, or for Hugo, if you would like to hear it.
Oh, boy. Please do.
So, my favorite Hugo moment, and there have been a lot, because he tends to be involved with quite a bit, but this one was super subtle. It was my first game that I had ever brought in the character Sylvie. And I was sleeping up in the woods at the time. And I was trying to get back to my tent. And I had a couple other people with me. And I was like, all right, we have to like go up into the woods to get to my tent. I don't think there's anything in there right now. So we're walking up this trail. And we look up and there's just a still light in the woods. And I didn't put it there. Like, it wasn't at my camp, and, you know, it shouldn't have been there. And we were like, hello? Is there anyone there? And there was just no answer. And we did it again. We were like, hello? And again, it was no answer. So we were like, nope, get the fuck out of here, turn around, we're getting out of here, go. So we turned around, we left. I was like, I will literally go to bed later. I'm not going anywhere near that light, thinking it was a casting. So we're standing in the field and we're talking about what we saw to people, like, oh my gosh, there's something up there in the woods, blah, 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 blah. And Hugo just casually walks by with the light, the exact same light on his little staff thing that he carries around. We were like, yep. Was that you? And he went, yep. You just nodded at us, and we were like, God damn it, Hugo.
Yep. Yeah. That lantern, I feel like I've broken it a couple times just because there have been moments where night fights have started and I've just had to yeet it off the end of my staff to start fighting stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the start of every Friday game, usually I'm walking around in the woods with a staff.
Yep.
And back in the day, I was mute, and so there was just this light floating around out there. And if you hailed it, it would not answer. Or it would do a little clap at you. Oh, God. There have been moments, though, where I was trying to, like, there was somebody who was standing around in the field, and there was a monster on the other side of them. And I was clapping at them, and like, oh, thank you for the applause, and they got mauled to death by a hellion.
That's perfect.
I was like, please, let me get your attention so I can point at the thing that's running up behind you about to shank you in the ribs with its little foam fist and murder the bejesus out of you.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Year of my life doing that.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna do a little conclusion. Before we do, is there anything else you want to talk about or you wanted to bring up that you didn't get the chance to?
With Hugo, I mean, we kind of covered all the bases, right? Where, yeah, he's been through a lot, but it's sort of been in blah. Whatever he's done has always kind of been in reaction to whatever's been happening at game. And whenever you give a player an overpowered item, it just kind of can go off the rails if they're me. Honestly, if you're the kind of rat bastard who would just be like, hey, here's this item that makes you overpowered, and just abuse the crap out of it.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, no. Keep it in mind if you're going to make a game and do stuff, that stuff can and will be cheesed.
For sure.
For sure. And yeah, characters change. You might come into game with this idea of who your character is, but then 20 minutes later you realize all you've really done is been spouting your backstory at somebody, and then decide, yeah, I should never talk again.
Oh my gosh. I feel like you're so hard on yourself. You're fine. You do great things.
It's a Hugo thing, I think. All my other characters aren't very hard on themselves, but Hugo kind of is.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's because I'm hard on myself and how I play Hugo, or if it's just sort of what is brought about by how Hugo acts.
Well,
where your in-character personality influences your out-of-character personality and vice versa.
Well, he's done, if I can just say something about Hugo before we end off, I think he's done a lot of, especially in his role as the sheriff and stuff like that, he's been very brave to kind of stand up to a lot of shenanigans going on in town, both with NPCs and player characters, so he's a very commendable, brave character, and I think you do a good job with him.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem.
And
it's always nice to get to chat to fellow LARPers about LARP things.
Oh, I know. It's the best. I love doing these. But everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with another character spotlight again. And yeah, Mitch, I'll see you at game.
All right. Maybe we'll talk about the Funny Man.
Yeah. Yes, we definitely have to have you back to talk about Vadim.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, everyone out there, we will see you next time. See you at game. Have a great day. Bye.
Take care, all.